Welcome to the March 3rd cross-regional session. Today we're focusing on strengthening bottom-up movement building. And so we're looking at the lessons learned from the regions as they've mobilized around the Ubuntu Symposium. Please do follow us on Twitter or send, if something comes up and you think it's great to share and you're on Twitter, please feel free to share and using the Ubuntu Symposium or the Symposia Ubuntu hashtag. Okay. So those are basically, that is the sort of the housekeeping for this morning. And now we're going to go into the conversation that we're going to have with our regional coordinators. So the purpose of today's discussion, and I guess it's really quite clear in the title, etc., but it's an opportunity for the regional networks to come together, to share, to learn from each other. And really, although we're focusing on the Ubuntu Symposium, really is looking at bottom-up mobilization and what has sort of worked, what hasn't worked, what have the challenges been, what have the lessons learned been as the regions have organized and planned activities and events around the Ubuntu Symposium. So the idea is that that the discussion it's political, it's focusing on the themes of the symposium. It's insightful, it's relevant, it's forward-looking. So this is what we're sort of expecting from the speakers. And so with that, to understand that the conversation, we had a call with the speakers yesterday. And one of the questions was like, the lessons learned are not always positive. And that's really part of this, is to really challenge ourselves to be honest with what has worked, what hasn't worked, how can we get better, and really look at that. So the conversation will hopefully be some, a mix of really good positive things that have come out of it, and then also some challenges and areas where we can learn and do better next time, or even, in fact, not even next time, because we've still got 4 months of the symposium going. So one of the key organizing principles of the symposium has been, or of the network really, of the alliance, is around this idea of shared power. Power with is one of the main themes of the symposium, and so horizontal organizing. And so one of the things the Alliance has been really working on over the last few years is this idea of finding alternatives to top-down prescriptive models of organizing. So as a result, when we looked at the symposium and what would really work to manifest that, to really bring that principle into actual practical manifestation. And so some of the guiding principles that emerged through discussions around how to organize and how to have a less top-down prescriptive approach included this idea of a bottom-up approach, really looking at how we can expand diversity and inclusivity, thinking about re-energizing the networks, having representative participation, transparency, accountability, and really, I think the biggest thing is this idea of co-creation and collective ownership, so that it's not just this top-down, but really something that we've come together. And through all the challenges and all the lessons learned, we've all grown and we've put this thing on together. And at the end of the day, there's this real feeling of collective ownership and meaningful involvement, and that everyone feels like they have had an opportunity to meaningfully engage and participate in this process, and not just in the process of the symposium itself, but really also in the process of creating the symposium. And so as a result, so we had that guiding principle, and then we had this idea of what that would look like in practice. And as a result, the decision was that the symposium, and it is sort of in play right now, is that the symposium is being organized through these contextualized regional plans. And they are anchored in the overall framework of the symposium, but they are contextualized depending on the different regions and what the needs are and where the different networks are, because each of the different networks are focusing on different areas right now. And the idea is that these processes aim to support movement building and the mobilization of civil society across the networks and across the regions. And so, as you can imagine, to actually really practically implement a bottom-up approach is an ongoing and a long process. So this really started in 2017. The first round of talks was in Ottawa in Canada, where the board members got together and discussed whether or not they should have this third symposium. So there's been the first symposium and the second symposium. And so the first discussion was, is it relevant? Is it the best thing for us to do? And that happened in Canada in 2017. Then there was a second discussion in August 2018, thinking about what it would look like. So the idea was, yes, it will happen. So then, okay, great. What is going to happen? Then initially it was going to happen in Beirut. And so there was more discussions that took place in Beirut, and really then getting into more of the nitty gritty and looking at the region specific planning. And then in sort of December 2019, through February, March, really, these listening rounds with each of the different regions, offering a space for the regions to really engage in what it is that they want to contribute, how they want to participate, et cetera, and that culminated in this final meeting, which we didn't at that time know it would be the final meeting, but certainly the final in-person meeting was in Kigali, Rwanda in February last year. And it was at this meeting that we arranged finalized sort of the organizational flow, the organizational chart, and how the regions would be represented in the organizing process. And so what that resulted in is basically these organizing committees. And so there's been over 130 members involved in the decision-making processes, in the planning, every step of the way. And they've been divided into these different committees. So we've had the International Steering Committee, the Local Organizing Committee, Resource Mobilization, Program, Communications, Youth Assembly Committee, the Advisory Committee, and now we've recently put together the Ubuntu Declaration and Call for Action Working Group, which comprises about 50 people from the different regions that are working on developing this Ubuntu Declaration and Call for Action, which we will launch at the closing of the symposium in June. So that is sort of the background to the discussion. We're very grateful today to have with us representatives from 6 of the regions that we're working in and that the Alliance is involved in. So I'm just going to introduce them by name now. And then what we'll do is, once I've done that, in a minute, I'll go to each of the participants. We'll go in alphabetical order and give them an opportunity to introduce themselves and just share with us a little bit about their thinking around the symposium. So for today, we have with us from the MenEngage Africa region, there's Josephine Mukwendi and Hassan Sekajulu. From the Caribbean region, we have representatives are Kevin Liverpool and Tricia Basdeo Gobin. From the South Asia Network, we have Sumita Sugatimala and Mangesh Kulkarni, who's based in India. From the North America region, there's Craig Norberg-Bohm and Carlos Idibu. From Latin America, we have Alvaro Campos. From Europe, we have Ellis Larson, and then I'll be the moderator of today's conversation. So with that, I'd really like to hand over to the speakers now, and we'll introduce you one at a time. As I say, we can go in alphabetical order. And it's just an opportunity, there's a minute each, just an opportunity to introduce yourselves, let us know anything you'd like us to know about what it is that you're doing, and one word or one phrase. So really a short soundbite around what it is that you think, how you're feeling about the symposium organizing. And obviously then we're going to go into a much broader discussion. So really just that quick soundbite as a starting point. So if I can start with Alvaro.
Muy buenos días o buenas tardes a todas las personas. Soy Alvaro Campos, de Costa Rica. Pertenezco al Instituto Costarricense de Masculinidad y también a la coordinación de Latinoamérica de MenEngage. Soy co-coordinador. Muy feliz por el simposio, muy lleno de entusiasmo, muy lleno de esperanza. Estamos realizando mucho trabajo acá, no solo las actividades a través del Facebook Live o a través de conferencias, sino también grupos de apoyo para hombres, grupos de reflexión para hombres y terapia, porque recordemos que estamos en contexto de pandemia y eso ha ocasionado muchas situaciones de crisis que los hombres convierten en violencia, entonces necesitamos atender eso. Entonces el simposio ha estado unido a toda esa movilización como lo vamos a ver ahora, por eso el entusiasmo. Muchas gracias y espero aprender mucho del día de hoy.
Great, thank you, Alvaro. And Carlos?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because as I said, my the internet here has been acting these days. So if I get cut off, please don't mind me. I will be back. That said, I think it's been an incredible, experience since we started this symposium and the idea of having it online, which actually it's not really there is no any other choice because there is COVID that got imposed to us and we have to deal with that. But what I just wanted to say is that it's incredible how with all this work online, Global MenEngage managed as well as the different region managed to implement this symposium according to their own contest. We are all concerned trying to figure out what could in one hand transform the political and patriarchal agenda. So for me, being part of organizing the MenEngage at North America Symposium was an incredible experience, and I will talk more about that as we're moving forward in the discussion.
Fantastic.
Thank
you, Carlos. So Craig, and then after Craig, we'll go to Ellis.
Well, sure. Good. It's morning for me. Good afternoon, good evening. It's a delight to be here. I think my soundbite is wonderful to connect. The experience of connecting around the world has been exciting for us. I think we've, as much as we in North America feel like we're doing things, I don't think we're all that well connected. And I think that our members of our North American region are not used to international conversations. And so the symposium has really brought that along and has mobilized that process, and it's very exciting. So that's the soundbite. So I feel we're happy to be here.
Thank you. Ellis? And then after Ellis, we'll have Hassan.
I start. You hear me? I hope.
Yeah.
I just want to I totally agree with the speakers from before. So to me personally, it feels great to be part of this global conversation, and to me, it's amazing to be part of that. And I know that goes for MenEngage Europe's members too. So it feels great to be here. I think we as a network has picked up some things too from these conversations, and look forward to speak to you.
Great, thank you so much. Hassan? And then after Hassan will be Josephine. I can't see if Hassan is in the room. He was having connection issues. So there he is. Hassan, if you can unmute yourself, and if not, then we'll just go straight to you, Josephine.
Yes, I have.
There we go.
Good morning, good afternoon for Jolo. I am the regional coordinator for Africa region. And for me, the bottom-up organizing the symposium is, in one word, renewal. It is renewal for me because there has been lots of learning, especially learning how to work with people online in this part of the world where the internet influence. I have had to learn to be very patient, but also be able to work many days ahead so that people get time to actually prepare. Some people had to find a specific office where they can connect to be able to participate in the processes. So for me, it's been renewed learning so much, working with people, but also the wonderful sessions and the knowledge, the so rich knowledge that has been in all these sessions. So that is it for me.
Great, thank you, Hassan. Josephine.
Good morning, everyone. Afternoon. My name is Josephine Mukwendi, working for Sonke Gender Justice, who are the Secretariat for the MenEngage Africa chapter. My role at Sonke is to coordinate the 22 MenEngage Africa chapter. I think for me, mobilizing for the symposium has been, I think, incredible. And also just to brightly put what Hassan mentioned, that, it also brought with it a lot of learning to do. Having to host an online global symposium. I mean, in the previous years, we've had it face-to-face, but this time around, having it online, mobilizing 22 countries to stay tuned and to follow the symposium. We had a lot of learning to do and a lot of patience, but it's been exciting. So I'm looking forward to sharing our experiences from Africa. Thank you.
Great. We're so looking forward to hearing it all. Thank you, Josephine. Then Kevin, and then Mangesh, and then Samita. So Kevin next.
Hi, good day, everyone. Hello. My name is Kevin Liverpool. I am the administrator of the Caribbean Male Action Network, and my role is to coordinate the regional secretariat and really provide support to our country chapters in the Caribbean. My word is I feel really inspired and connected by the symposium, and I am really, really optimistic about what comes next.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Bianca.
Kevin. Thank you. And then Mangesh.
Hi, I'm Mangesh Kulkarni. I'm a co-convener of the Forum to Engage Men, which is the India country network. I also happen to be one of the founders of this network and was involved in organizing the previous global symposium in Delhi 2014. And also edited the volume that came out of that symposium, that's called Global Masculinities, published by Routledge. I think this particular process of mobilizing for the current global symposium has been a very unusual one, precisely because of the COVID crisis. It has also, therefore, opened up possibilities, undoubtedly. I mean, this kind of a prolonged kind of interaction that we have been having, and I must say I've been involved in many of these interactions over the last several months. So this has happened because of the crisis-induced kind of scenario, and also because the availability of a certain kind of technology. And I think on the whole, we have had a very wide range of discussions, and we have also been able to involve a quite wide variety of people in these discussions. In that sense, I think this is something unprecedented. There have, as far as grassroots mobilization in India is concerned, there have been certain challenges about which maybe I will speak later. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mangesh. And Samita, and then lastly, Tricia.
Hi, everyone. Good evening from Sri Lanka, and I know it's good morning for most of you over there. I really do agree with most of the speakers. I mean, I'm really feeling excited, and it had been an amazing journey. And just to add on to that, personally for me, it had been quite a journey of personal growth. Like it had widened my perspective, and it had kind of widened my way of looking at things, and most of all, to be the regional coordinator during the symposium time had kind of taken everything out of me. So I'm like still although it had been so overwhelming, and still I'm excited. So I'll stop here now.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Samita. And then Tricia, will go over to you.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Bianca, when you go last, just saying for the record, it's always a challenge, especially when, you have speakers who, capture everything, all of the emotions, all of the positivity. I'm looking at Josephine, and I'm just feeling her energy right now as well. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tricia Basdeo coming from Trinidad and Tobago, and I bring greetings on behalf of the Caribbean Male Action Network and all of our our executive committee members as well. For me personally, Bianca and colleagues, I think for me, the symposium has been a very energizing one, and right now I feel very energized. I feel like it has been, very inspiring, as Kevin would have mentioned, and it's a very exciting time as well for me. And as I think someone mentioned, it's also about growth. But I think from an organizational standpoint, CariMAN, for where I sit, I think it has really been one of transformation for CariMAN, and for most of you on the call, coordinators, you would know that this is probably the first symposium that CariMAN has had such a presence and visibility at of all of the MenEngage Global Symposiums. So it's very exciting to see the transformation from where CariMAN was and the progress and the learning, all of the learning curves that we're going through, the uphills, the downhills, the positive and the negatives as well, and how are we continuing to grow from that as well. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Great, thank you. It's wonderful to hear from all of you, and thank you again for joining us today. I love the idea of the energizing, the excitement. I just think I think we feel the same, and then there's just so much going on. I think when we came up with, or when the idea or the intention to do this bottom-up mobilizing was first put into practice, there was the idea that there would be 4, maybe 5 days in Rwanda. And it's obviously taken on a very different look and feel with an 8-month process that is now online. So we've all had to just grow and learn and be challenged and then grow from that. So really wonderful to hear all your different perspectives. Thank you. So what we'll do now is we'll go into sort of some more of the in-depth conversation around these questions. What I'll say to the speakers, if you are having challenges with the internet, you can always put the video off. Obviously, we love to see your faces, but if it doesn't work and it's easier to, not easier, but if the internet is better with the video off, then please feel free to switch the video off. And so what we'll do now is we're going to sort of break up into a few smaller discussions with a few of the participants. Then they will share their thoughts and learnings. Then we'll bring another few in. They'll share their thoughts and learnings. And we'll do that a couple of times. And then at the end, we will bring together all the participants, all the speakers, for a final round of takeaways from the discussion. So again, the idea, the intention for this session is to be learning from each other, to be sharing with each other. And so we're hoping for a really flowing, open dialogue conversation. So as for the speakers, do feel free to just jump in and to connect them with one another as feels appropriate to you. So first is we're going to have Josephine Hassan from Africa, and we'll have Alvaro from Latin America, and then Samita and Mangesh. So if all of those could be spotlighted and brought into the panel, that would be fantastic. And we'll start with you. So it's basically the Latin America region, the Africa region, and the South Asia region. And what we'll do is ask the question. The first question is, so what are the key learnings that you've taken from this? So, we had that quick soundbite and it was fantastic, but what are sort of those key learnings that you have experienced or experiencing as a result of the actual organizing around the symposium? We ask that you keep it to 3 at the most, just so that we have enough time for everyone to converse. And so I can open that up if there's anyone that would like to share first. Otherwise, I can just call on you. Samita.
Hi, yeah. So just to, share, I think they can be called learnings in its own way. But just to bring out a few things that, how we have actually, at the very beginning, how we looked at the whole concept of symposium to, be, and then how did it kind of, took its own journey and came to the position that where we are today. Looking at the whole process, I think one of the things that we were actually looking at is that, over the years we have been discussing why that we need to engage men and boys, and that we really knew that when it comes to this symposium that we wanted to move into how to engage men and boys. So I think when it comes to different regions, this why and how had brought a lot of learnings itself. Like when it comes to a region like South Asia, where we have a lot of cultural differences, lot of languages that we can't handle. Sometimes the knowledge cannot be handled because it's so much of languages, and it's really challenging to transfer knowledge to people. So I think in certain cases, I think we are still in the why part of it, although we wanted to move into how to engage men and boys. So I think I really wanted to bring that aspect into today's discussion, because I mean, although we think that we can take a step forward, it's always not so, and it's still a process, and that we learn through the process. So I think this symposium taught us that there's a lot more to learn through the process. And the other thing is that the whole symposium had been very reflective. I think it was kind of for a whole network. It was a critical reflection for the network, where we actually looked at our own behaviors, our own ways of managing things, our own ways of governing things, our own ways of practicing things. So all these reflective things brought a lot of learnings for, I think, for most of the regions, and as well as for South Asia, where we think that in certain cases we really need to start from zero, and in certain cases we need to we are quite ready to move into what we call to the political agenda. It's like it's a huge kind of a distance between starting from certain a zero level and moving into the political agenda that we are looking at. So that is something that I want to bring into this discussion today from my side. And also one more thing, the whole process of inner work that we brought into the whole symposium. I think we all as change makers, we all as activists, we are doing so much every day, and we are every day we have been taken up by so many disheartening things, and of course a lot of positive things as well. But it's sometimes quite overwhelming, and we really need to take care of our own selves. So the whole aspect of self-care and inner work, I think that's had been a great learning. So I'll bring those three aspects into the discussion.
Great, thank you, Samita. Josephine, do you want to share?
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I totally agree with what my colleague Samita has been sharing, that the symposium itself brought a lot of learning. As I mentioned earlier on in my introduction, that, the 2-3 global symposium that have happened were face-to-face. So for us to organize a global symposium that is virtual, we had a lot of learning to do. As a region, as Africa, we had to, and we're still continuing to learn every day. We had an opportunity also as Africa to be able to implement in-country symposium, what we call in-country symposium, where our 22 countries are getting an opportunity where they are also hosting their own local symposium. So the learning that has come because of that process is that, as Africa, we had to plan. We had to plan way ahead of time. As you know, in Africa, we have, infrastructural challenges. So because of that, we had to mobilize way ahead of time. We had to, learn a lot of skills in terms of, how to be able to host this virtual symposium, and how also our country partners and our members can be able to be online on time. Yeah, so there was a lot of learning. There was a lot of preparation that we had to do and that we are still doing way ahead of time. But I think also maybe on a more positive side is, you know, the whole symposium as a learning, it has made us, or it has made us be able to reach the project beneficiaries. You know, when we implement, sometimes, you know, it's very difficult to, you know, to get to the actual beneficiary of the program. But the fact that this was virtual, you know, people could be able to participate in the symposium on their devices in the comfort of their own homes. We also learned that, you know, all these programs, or all this, I mean, the symposium itself was able to, provided a platform where we could reach our target audience. And another audience, I mean, we've been talking about it even this year as we were doing our analysis, that, you know, we've received a lot of visibility as Africa just by the symposium happening. We are receiving a lot of requests for people wanting to join the network, people wanting to know about, you know, the whole engagement of men and boys in the work that we do. So there's such suddenly interest in the work in the work that we're doing. There's just been a huge increase in the demand, in the interest, in the partnership, even the partnership, some of the partnership that we've been struggling to engage with, they are suddenly, you know, coming to the fore, and that has increased our partnership level, both at a country level and also at a regional level. So, I mean, we have a lot of lessons, learnings that we've done. I don't know if I've even mentioned 3, but I can still continue. Yeah, but I think also as Africa, just the opportunity to host, we've hosted the 3-day kickoff meetings, which we've seen a lot of UN agencies coming on board, and that has strengthened our partnership with them and even their own engagement in the work that we do at a country level and also at a regional level. I think 3. I'm happy to continue later. Thank you, Bianca.
Thanks, Josephine. Alvaro, do you want to jump in?
No sé si me toca a mí ya o hay más compañeros de África. Okay.
You can speak, Alvaro, and then we can bring the others in.
Bien. Bueno, es la primera vez en mi vida en que un simposio dura tanto tiempo, 8 meses, en una crisis mundial como pandemia, y que no sea presencial. Anteriormente los simposios eran un evento de una semana máximo con unos cuantos representantes que viajaban. Esta ha sido tal vez la lección más importante. Es posible realizar un simposio en época de pandemia y por medios virtuales, logrando la participación de amplios sectores de cada uno de los países, en este caso, de América Latina. Nosotros logramos en el simposio una participación muy amplia de sector universitario en los diferentes países, de las redes MenEngage de cada país, también de organizaciones juveniles, de grupos de hombres a nivel comunitario que también participaron, y mujeres. Básicamente fueron los sectores que desde América Latina estuvieron participando. Ya de antes del simposio habíamos organizado un sistema de participación a través de los medios virtuales, el Facebook o el Zoom, en donde se daban diferentes temas y participábamos. Cuando ya vino el simposio, formamos en Uruguay, que fue la sede de lo que fue América Latina, un centro de medios del simposio en donde prácticamente hicimos un simposio regional. Nos uníamos a las conferencias del simposio global, pero hicimos un simposio regional en donde hubo participación. ¿Cómo se dio esta participación? ¿O qué aprendimos? Que este tema de masculinidades igualitarias y transformadoras convoca a muchos sectores de la sociedad. Eso es lo primero. Los convoca a activistas, organizaciones de masas. Y esto ha permitido generar muchos temas alrededor del simposio. Por otro lado, el simposio permitió que el tema masculinidad o la variable masculinidad se articule con otras variables de la dinámica social, como por ejemplo pobreza, militarismo, neoliberalismo y estructura económica, estructura política, discriminación, o sea, cambio climático. O sea, el simposio puso en agenda temas que antes no trabajábamos tanto en América Latina. En América Latina trabajábamos fundamentalmente los temas de igualdad de género, prevención de la violencia de las mujeres, muy en el ámbito institucional, en el ámbito doméstico, y muy poco nos referíamos a la relación entre masculinidades, estructura económico-política o militar o cambio climático. O sea, el simposio permitió poner estos temas de agenda y ampliar nuestra visión, que va a quedar más allá del simposio. Son temas que quedaron ahí, que hay que seguir de alguna otra manera trabajando. Una limitación es que al ser virtual, pues pueden participar solamente los sectores que tienen facilidad para conectarse a Internet. Pero bueno, son mucho más que si el simposio hubiera sido tradicional. O sea, sí se logró que mucha gente participara, ¿verdad? Entonces, esa sería. Y lo otro es que el encuentro presencial permite siempre procesos que no posibilita lo virtual, como este encuentro cara a cara. Sin embargo, alrededor del simposio realizamos actividades, por ejemplo, en Costa Rica, que tenemos grupos de apoyo para hombres, donde hemos dado hasta terapia virtual, en terapia de grupo. Hombres afectados por el COVID en momentos de crisis y han hablado de lo que sienten virtual. Yo no me hubiera imaginado que todo eso lo podríamos hacer virtualmente. En síntesis, para terminar, el simposio permitió abrir una caja, no de Pandora, no, una caja de esperanzas nuevas, una caja de cosas muy positivas, una caja de regalos que no estábamos preparados y no sabíamos lo que íbamos a encontrar. Y no hemos sacado todo lo que había en esa caja. Eso ha sido lo importante del simposio. Más que un simposio es el método de trabajo. Y el de pronto articularnos y vernos que estamos con compañeras de África, o compañeros de Europa, o compañeros de Asia del Sur, reunidos hablando de un mismo tema. O sea, eso no se había dado antes. Y yo quisiera que esto no se pierda, que estos regalos no se pierdan. Eso sería básicamente lo que hemos aprendido hasta el momento en lo que es de América Latina.
Beautiful, thank you. And now I'll open it up. Hassan, Mangesh, would either of you like to jump in?
Yeah, well, compared to the previous symposium, symposium held in Delhi 2014, this time it has been obviously a very different process. And as I said earlier, it opened up some possibilities, but also it probably created some challenges also. For example, last time what we did was in India, for example, as part of the mobilization for the global symposium. It's a big country, as you know, India, and it has its own diversity. And so we divided the country into regions, and in each region, certain preliminary exercises were conducted prior to the symposium, leading up to the symposium. And I, for example, coordinated part of it as far as the Western region is concerned. Here, for example, the Western region, what we did was, and more or less similar kinds of things were done elsewhere in the country. And that was, we conducted two sort of back-to-back symposia, regional symposia, one which focused more on, let's say, academic issues, on critical masculinity studies, but in the context of the region, of course. And we brought together a team of experts to discuss different aspects of it, which I coordinated. And also, there was another similar exercise, which brought together primarily activists from this region. And of course, there was some sort of a give and take between these two symposia at the regional level. we also, I remember particularly organizing a film show and then a discussion around it, a documentary film show that was meant for students at my university. These are, young people in their early 20s and so on. Now, this sort of a process, this time in India for various organizational reasons, and apart, of course, from the COVID challenge, we were not able to really put into practice this time. And especially because of the COVID crisis, what happened, I think, was that, there was, after a while, there was a sort of webinar fatigue. I think we have experienced it, all of us. So that happened, and the young people and many others also, of course, they were under all kinds of pressures, right? I mean, related to health, related to work, and the students and teachers also, people like me, and people also with administrative responsibilities like me in the education system, were under pressure to conduct classes and examinations in very unusual ways. We were not uh, prepared for something like this at all. I mean, so, and that means that young people, particularly, were were definitely distracted, and they could not be. I think they really could not be mobilized the way it was done earlier in under normal circumstances. But I'll say two other things, however, which I think are definitely positive. We this time had, of course, a webinar that was on issues related to South Asia, with participation mainly from South Asia. But something similar was also done in the offline mode, of course, earlier in 2014. But I think this kind of cross-regional dialogue is probably new, if I'm not mistaken. So this is interesting. And then also, earlier we conducted an exercise where we online, where we tried to draw certain lessons from the earlier symposium, and how we can build on that legacy. And specifically, a unique outcome of that previous symposium, that was the book which I mentioned, which I have edited, that's called Global Masculinities, published by Routledge. There was also a discussion that was conducted around it as part of this ongoing process, which also I think was a good thing to do, because otherwise, these symposia or the discussions, etc., if they are not connected, if they do not generate a certain kind of an truly ongoing dialogue on and conversation, and unless the legacy of these previous symposia, etc., unless that feeds into the ones subsequently conducted and the ones yet to be conducted, etc., unless there is this continuum, in other words, then momentum is important, and the sense of continuity is important. And so I'm just using this term continuum to suggest both this continuity and momentum. So I know it has the technical meaning, physics, etc., but I'm just using it as a sort of I think somehow we have been able to do, and I hope we will. This is something that this will flourish in our the and beyond. I would probably. Is that okay? Yeah, that's the note
great.
on which I end.
That's perfect. Thank you. You
was I audible?
A little bit. Yes, you were audible, but then it was just at the end it started breaking up. But we got most of what you were saying. Thank you so much, MenEngage. Hassan, do you want to jump in? Hassan, are you still with us? Okay, I'm not seeing Hassan. Hassan? Okay, it looks like he's not here now, so I'm going to say thank you to the representatives that have. Oh, there he is. Hassan, do you want to jump in briefly and share a little bit about your key learnings so far?
Oh yes, yes.
Sorry, Hassan, your connection is quite bad. Yeah, it may be better if your video is off. Yeah.
Especially for me, the bottom up delivered a lot of ownership. In the beginning, when the discussion was around a virtual symposium and a face-to-face, at that time it was tough for us to even imagine that we could actually pull off a virtual symposium participation. It was really tough. But the fact that we asked the country networks within the Africa region to own the process, to make sure that they have activities around the Ubuntu Symposium within their own countries, and to let people know that the symposium is going to be virtual. That broke so many of the fears that we had. When we allowed people to own the process, it broke all the fears, because we just saw people sending in their concepts on how they're going to do the listening rounds, on how they're going to do the country symposiums. And we just said, like, wow, allowing people to own the process, it really solves so many of the problems that you can put on your head. So for me, that was a key learning. And it is something we're taking up within our own programming in the region, to increasingly let people own the process and think through the process and tell us how they want to implement this process. So for me, I cannot miss that one. The other one is that the Ubuntu Symposium started getting us thinking there is another way we can implement our programs. If we have managed to pull off the symposium, it means we need to rethink how we design our programming within the African region. It means that so many things can get done when we actually go online, and as long as we work with the people earlier. So that led to us starting virtual forums for chairpersons of country networks, virtual forums for coordinators of country networks, virtual forums for advocacy, resource mobilization, because the Ubuntu Symposium has shown us that people actually can do this when they own it. So you see how the symposium brings alternative programming for us. So for me, those are two key issues. Allowing people to own up broke all our fear on whether people would participate. And when the email came through that about 250 people had registered from Africa, we just said, is that true? How has that been possible? But it's just because we allowed people to own the process. That's it from me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hassan. So I'm wary of the time, so I don't want to go into too much of sort of summing up what has been said so far. So just to thank the speakers that have spoken so far. It's really exciting and inspiring to hear both the challenges and the sort of incredible, in some ways, I guess, unexpected outcomes of this whole COVID crisis, and of the need to shift from the regular in-person symposium to this longer online virtual process, and how we've all learned and grown from that experience. So it's really wonderful to be hearing that from all of you. So now if I can call on Ellis, Carlos, Craig to join us. And let me make sure I'm not, Tricia and Kevin. So North America, Caribbean, and Europe. And so if we can spotlight all of them, that'd be great. And I'm asking you the same question. And Carlos, I see that you have already unmuted yourself. So if you don't mind, I'd love to start with you. What would you say are the three key, or the top learnings so far?
Oh, I mean, it's, I just wanted to double check with Craig, because yesterday when we had our kind of briefing meetings, we said that he's going to speak first, and then I will jump in, but I can go.
Carlos, this is Craig. You're welcome to start. I'll follow you if you're into it.
Okay. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to to share our experience during this time. I love storytelling. Because I believe in in storytelling power, and because in my own personal life there are a lot of stories. So I'm not quite sure how the Ubuntu registered for you, but for me it's such a powerful theme. I come from 4 different tribes in Africa, because my dad is from Liberia and my mom is from Ghana. And I was born and raised in Ivory Coast. So we use the that quote, that proverb, in the different tribes that I come from. So when I saw the theme, I was like, wow, this is really powerful. I wonder how each person involved with the global MenEngage understand, and how they're going to use that in the work that we're doing. So for me, I am because you are, or because we are, make me think in terms of the themes that we chose in North America, which was intersectionality and decolonization. But also it's a theme that I've been using within my own family, because I have a big family. I have 12 sisters and 2 brothers, and once in a while, I ask them the questions what do you think about when I say, when I'm speaking in the public, or when I'm talking to you, and I said, I am because you are, how that resonates for you. And as a queer man, it means a lot for me that they are able to understand what that really means for me as a member of the family, as a human being, rather than focusing on my gender and my sexual orientation. So this space that the global MenEngage has been building over decades. Now, this space is no longer just based on heteronormative norms. It's clearly defined in the principles of the global MenEngage, that the SOGISEC/LGBT or queer community agenda is one of the things that they really want to stand for, and to understand how to do that work. It's clear. It's on the website. It's in so many documents that the Global MenEngage Alliance has been developing and putting forward, and also showing the support, not only during this pandemic, during this COVID, but for the first time that I got involved in the MenEngage work, I discovered slowly how it was a big thing for the Global Secretariat. So it's no longer a new conversation that we're having here. But what I'm questioning myself around is how each region, how each person, how each leader in this space is contributing and building, in making that principle something concrete. We're talking a lot here about transparency. We're talking about accountability. We're talking about diversity and inclusion, how that resonates in the mind of each leader in this platform, or involved in the work that the Global MenEngage is doing, both in the home country and in the region. So what we did as a NAMEN, as the North America, even though the themes that we chose, intersectionality and decolonization, were really grounded in the current conversation that we're having in North America in terms of racism, and in terms of where are the places that we as a men, regardless of sexual orientation and gender identity, what is the place that we're giving to women? But there was also the fact that because we already have the conversation, we started having the conversation around how do we include people that are represented around here. In terms of representation, in terms of responding to diversity, that's not a big challenge. But how do we include those people? So in the organizing process of our symposium, we managed to bring together on the same space people from different racial background, people from different sexual and gender identities, people from different interests in terms of the work that they're doing to respond in the transforming masculinities and the patriarchy agenda. So we did that. I'm not quite sure if my other colleagues, naming Shane and Craig here, noticed that little piece. But for me, that was like a significant, it was a huge thing because the panel that we had was such diverse and diversified in terms of like the content, but also in terms of who we're bringing, in the space to talk about this agenda. So my advocacy work that I'm doing here is because the SOGI/LGBT agenda is no longer, a conversation that we should think 1,000 times about before we start talking about that. It's a conversation that is out there. So we need to really integrate that as a part of the regional and, country agenda. There is no excuse around here anymore when we're talking about diversity and inclusion. There is no excuse anymore. There is no excuse that if I'm working and navigating, in that space of the global MenEngage or in different region, there is no excuse that I have to justify the fact that I'm a queer man. Therefore, it's important to see who is missing or who is in the room, but in the corner of the room being quiet. How different region is contributing and giving the voice to the people who stay in the corner because of the sexual orientation and gender identity. So those are the kind of things that unconsciously we managed to bring when we were organizing the North America Symposium. And I believe that by the content, by giving the space to Aboriginal people, by giving the space to youth, by giving the space to women, and I'm waving my flag here, saying thank you to Tonya and Unuma, who got us like a deep into the conversation and brought on the table like what intersectionality and decolonization really means. So this agenda of SOGI and LGBT, it's not just for the Global Secretariat. It should be and must be all of us. If we're talking about inclusion, if we're talking about like addressing and transforming masculinities, I'm going to say that there was different kind of masculinities and femininities out there. We're not going to talk about like the binary, agenda here anymore. Or if we want to do that, but at least let's build a safe space to remember that we live in such a diverse world now that it shouldn't be something that should shock people and they should question themselves around it. It has to be a fact, just for the sake of responding to that principle as part of the Global Secretariat principle. So that's what I wanted to put out there. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Carlos. Craig, did you want to add to that? And if I could just ask the speakers, I'm just watching the time. And so if we could try and keep the three or the top learnings, if you can try and keep them brief, that'd be great. So we can move into the next part. That'd be really wonderful.
I'll just be very brief. Carlos is beautiful. Amen. Yeah.
Exactly.
As in a sense, as a white master culture male, U.S. English speaking, I can list many things where I fit in a power up position in the world. And the humble nature of that is very real. And what we're learning is how do we have conversations from that point of view that contribute to decolonization, that contribute to these things. So this is the listening space for me and people like me is very important. And that's just a main important contribution to this space. So I just want to acknowledge that and appreciate it. I have lots of things to say, but I'll save it for the next section. So I just want to say thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you to both of you. Who would like to jump in? Tricia, Kevin?
Tricia, you want to go? Or?
You go first, Kevin.
Okay, sure.
Right off. Sure.
Right. Thanks, Tricia. So I just want to springboard off of a learning that Samita shared, when she shared how important self-care is, and that was one of the powerful lessons that came out. But even beyond individual self-care, we saw how important it is to build an organizational culture of self-care. Most of the symposium organizing was carried by Tricia, and there were times when I know she would have been overwhelmed. So it's really critical that, in the way that we work and that we really write it into our policies and how we do business, that self-care is prioritized. Josephine would have spoken about that increased visibility and increased interest in the network. And that too is something we have experienced at CariMAN, both at the local level and regional organizations reaching out, asking more about CariMAN, people wanting to be members. And I believe that would not have happened with a 5-day symposium in a country somewhere. So I think it's important moving forward. I mean, when the world is over COVID and we're able to connect again, it's important when we're planning that we have these hybrid models, that even though we're having a symposium in person and in a country for 3 to 5 days, that we supplement that with a longer online engagement. One of the big learnings for us is how important the local chapters are to the regional work. We adopted a regional communication strategy where we would reach out to country coordinators and country chapters and hope that they would filter it down to the local level. And that has been challenging. So coming off of what Hassan shared, that how it's important to facilitate that shared ownership. We recognize that the reverse would have been much more effective if we were able to mobilize at that grassroots level and then get them mobilizing their country chapters and feeding all the way back up. It would have been much more effective in building that collective ownership and promoting the symposium across the region. Handing over to Tricia.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Thanks so much. Thanks also for everyone who shared as well. A lot of what you said resonated with me personally as well. I think reflecting on, the months of planning for the symposium, but also the symposium kickoff, and then the months that, we're halfway through, I think the power of collaboration and networking is real and not to be taken loosely. And I think this is something that the symposium has really, really set out for CariMAN. And I go back to the point that I made earlier around that when we started planning for the symposium, or the conversations began around the symposium, I remember when I believe it was Kevin and our colleague from Guyana went to Rwanda for that meeting. And then from that time, CariMAN was just now starting to revitalize its membership and at the leadership level as well. So even then we were starting to kind of think through about the symposium, but thinking the symposium really allowed us to help strategize what our strategic plan would look like for the upcoming year. That would have been last year, given the priority themes as well of the symposium. So I think that was able for us to kind of merge, rather than seeing the symposium as additional work, seeing how the symposium was able to be built into our current work plan as well. So that was very helpful for us. Also, I think, the symposium really provided, and I think MenEngage or another colleague, Alvaro raised this point about, who the target audience, but also the challenges around connectivity and all of that. And I was happy to hear that, when he raised that point, because for me, that really resonated a lot, particularly because for us in the region, it meant that we need to really take a step back now moving forward and strategize around who are our target audience and how are we bringing in and working with grassroots organizations, both at the rural level, the indigenous communities, even how are we thinking about taking that intersectional lens one step further and continuing, building relationships, for example, with persons with disabilities. And those were some of the key areas that we weren't able to tap into. And I think it's really important because the symposium, while it felt as though we weren't tapping into these core groups, particularly at a grassroots level. but at the same time, we were able to, a plus for us, target a much wider representation in the Caribbean as well. And then, so I think that is also important for us to know. And then lastly, I wanted to just say that, I think the symposium for me, and also because the leadership right now with CariMAN is fairly new, for us, I feel as though this symposium, as opposed to having a 3-day session, physical face-to-face, I feel as though this duration and this prolonged period of months, while I acknowledge the fatigue with Zoom, it's a lot, I feel as though it really provided a moment for us to really get to know our MenEngage colleagues from across the region. So for example, I knew Carlos from, several other meetings, but a lot of the persons on, from the various networks, we would have only probably seen them on emails, but actually getting to connect with them, even during the planning sessions from day one, I felt as though that is a major learning lesson for us. How can we keep the momentum, even not just at the regional level and then taking it a step further to the local chapters, but at the global secretariat level? How can we continue to make sure that we are creating and providing the space for this, for the networks to continue to have conversations like these and just check in with each other, and providing the space for it as well. And the symposium was really able to captivate that. And it was also able for us at CariMAN to provide a space, not just for our regional members, but also provide a space for those persons and organizations who we are now, who we consider our partners, coming with various level of expertise as well. And, we see it as capacity building for us at CariMAN as well, by bringing in all of those other partners. And I go back to the point around there is power in collaborating and networking as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And Ellis?
Yeah, thank you. It's so good to hear all of you in this room and from the other talk too. And I also agree on a lot that has been said, so I won't repeat it. But I'm working at the MenEngage Europe Secretariat. So I just want to give you like a brief background on Europe. That it has been a network, but we're starting to work. We just received like a bit more funding last year, so we have started up the secretariat, and me and Luis Linneo, who a lot of you have met, started working this fall. So we are fairly new, and that also goes for us as a region in a way. Even though we've been part of the network, we also feel like we are kind of on our way of becoming something. So we are starting up our advocacy work, for example, right now. So that is just a brief background on Europe. And then I totally agree on the thing of having this prolonged symposium that has been so important, and to get the sense of being a part of a actual global conversation. And that gives a lot of insights for everyone who participates in the conversations. So before this call, I asked some colleagues what they wanted to highlight, and I went like thinking for myself too. And it was the question of inclusion from different directions, but especially in regards with intersectionality and inclusion and diversity, and also decolonization. That is very much a key issue for MenEngage Europe right now, and that is something that we are working with outside of the Ubuntu, but also within the Ubuntu sessions. And taking part of experiences from all over the world is really important for that discussion. We have had, and besides from that, it's also been a learning process with arranging online and in terms of how to include, because we have, I know that goes for a lot of the regions, but we have a lot of languages and language barriers in Europe. And that also goes for when speaking of colonization. It is also something interesting for us in Europe, that we both have this classical colonial heritage from Britain, for example, or Spain, or my country, Sweden, has some connections to that too. But we also have other kind of histories in Eastern Europe and in parts of Western Europe too. So we're kind of trying to understand what it means for us as a European network, and this is a great opportunity to get more ideas and to take part of a global conversation. And I also agree with what people said. I hope that this is a conversation that will continue. And I also personally, as a Secretariat member, I would really love to sometimes get in touch with all of you, like for other matters that could be kind of technical, or like, how do you make your elections, that kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of good to get from having contact on this cross-regional level, and I'm really happy to meet you, because this is one of my first times being here present in this kind of call. Okay, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So thank you to all of you. It's, I don't know what the word is, fascinating, interesting. Both of them are coming to me right now. Just to hear the impact that the symposium has had, and I feel like it's such in a way, although we call the pandemic the crisis, etc., in a way it has really opened up so many opportunities for all of us that none of us really expected. And a lot of it, as people have said, is around like the difference between coming together for 5 days and having an 8-month process, and how the inclusion can be greater just through this process of being a longer term sort of engagement with each other. And then also, though, noticing that, I think, and it really gives us that opportunity to notice by having this time, is that the inclusion and the diversity is improved, and yet we're still missing other areas. And so there's always this room to try and increase that. And by having this time, we've still got like 4 months, 3.5 months, something like that, the opportunity to really increase in these areas where we think we need to. And that, I think, is such a wonderful opportunity. The opportunity for capacity building, for increased partnership, increased visibility of the networks. I think all of those things are truly, truly so powerful. And I think unexpected, I mean, that's supposed to be the vision, but it's not often that the vision sort of comes together in these different ways. And so even though the contexts are different and the regions are different, there seems to have been similar outcomes in some ways. And then I also feel like there's some areas for cross-learning. For example, Africa seemed to really do well with this idea of the local co-ownership. And some of the other regions have expressed a desire to learn from that. And so how can we bring the regions together to share that kind of information moving forward? And then I'll just end, before we move into the next round, sort of reminding us of Carlos's very important sort of call to action, that Ubuntu is such a powerful theme. I am because you are, and that we have to really practice it. We have to walk that idea, the essence of Ubuntu, and how we can bring that into manifestation further on in the symposium. But then I think really importantly, beyond the symposium and in the work that we're all doing outside of this. So thank you to all of you. I am now going to just share to those that are in the audience and the participants, if you have anything, any reflections, any questions, any comments that you'd like to share about what you've heard, or just your experiences within the symposium so far, please do feel free to share them in the chat. And then we can take a moment in a little while to hopefully have some time with the speakers to reflect on what it is that you're sharing with us. So please do feel free to use the chat, jump in, and we'll come back. We'll come to those points in a little bit of time. So now, moving on to our second round of discussions, I'm going to call in Samita. Carlos, you should stay. Ellis, you should stay. And then Josephine and Mangesh. So these are the next round of discussions. So we're kind of spreading the regions a little bit differently right now. And the question to you is, and so now we've kind of really spoken about what are the key learnings, what are the key areas that we need to focus on moving forward. And so now the question is sort of at a practical level, how does this inform the work and the initiatives that we're planning to strengthen the networks, to continue increasing the visibility, increasing the inclusion, diversity, etc. And so, yeah, I'd like to call on Samita, Carlos, Ellis, Josephine, and Mangesh. And I am happy for you to, whoever feels comfortable starting this conversation, to jump in. And then just a reminder to all of you that feel free to, I don't need to call on you, feel free to unmute yourself if there's something you want to say and really get into a dialogue with each other. I'm very happy for that to be how it flows now. So over to you. And if not, I'm going to call on someone.
Well, should I start then?
Go for it. Go for it.
You want us to just jump in?
Yeah.
Can you hear my voice?
We can, Craig. I think there's two of you.
Can you hear my voice?
I don't think you can hear us now. Sorry, Samita.
I'm sorry?
No, Samita was speaking, and then I'm not sure if you could hear that.
I'm not sure if my voice is working.
We can certainly hear you now, yeah.
Samita, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think speaking from South Asia point of view, how this whole learning had practically kind of, supported us as a region, and what were the points that, that mattered to us in terms of these key learnings. One thing is, of course, I should definitely mention here is the involvement of youth in the whole process, because we have been able to mobilize a lot of young people as both as speakers and also as people who kind of engage in these discussions, take learnings from the symposium to their own organizations, for their own work that they do as young people, to generate discussions on maybe topics on SGBV, on cyber violence, and issues related to LGBTQ community. And jumping from youth, I think, as Carlos perfectly mentioned in the earlier discussion, this whole symposium, I mean, South Asia being a very kind of, traditional minded and kind of, very have some limitations when it comes to whole discussion on LGBT community. Most of the countries are not, have not opened their doors to people. But along with these discussions, because the symposium opened so many doors onto and created so many spaces, we were able to engage from our own ends, to engage organizations working on LGBTQ issues and young people who are actually coming from these organizations and contributing into the work that we are doing, and engaging with the MenEngage Alliance at country level. And I can bring examples from Sri Lanka, where we actually have a kind of a youth wing that we work with on different issues, like mostly like on LGBTQ issues, and also moving into movement building. I think we actually showed the whole world that what we really meant by feminist informed, because of the huge involvement of the feminist movement in this whole symposium, bringing in their kind of different perspectives, and the whole of research aspect into is the academic kind of viewpoints, so many perspectives, from technical expertise point of view, as well as at the grassroots level, the grounded practitioners point of view. So all these things actually supported us in our country level to bind the network together, and also to reach out to women's organizations, women, feminist movement, and also to bring them into the discussions, bring them in as speakers to the round table, so that they also take this kind of ownership, and they feel that they are also part of that from our national levels. So practically these things had been quite challenges lately, but with these open discussions and things happening, the momentum building that had been there, it created so much of space and so much of how do I say, dialogue points, I would say, like, so that we could initiate discussions. So that had been quite useful. And I think now it's for us to kind of pick up from that and take it forward. This momentum, we shouldn't let it die, and we need to kind of bring it into our next level. So that is practically how it has affected the whole region.
Thank you. Josephine, you want to jump in since you're unmuted?
Okay. I'll speak for Craig. I think I really agree with what Samita said. As an outcome basically of the symposium, just being able to create the opportunities and platforms to engage with previously organizations or networks that we couldn't reach. So the symposium actually gave us that platform or opportunity to be able to engage with the like-minded people, and it also brought opportunities, or it also basically surfaced the work of engaging men and boys more. So now it's now in the open, and I think basically I've also mentioned the issue about, our strengthened relationships with some of the strategic partners, especially UN agencies. There's now increased interactions with them, as an outcome of, or as an output of the symposium. I mean, in collaborations. I think even the sessions that Africa is hosted in this symposium, in the session that we're still going to host, I think you've also seen that even our engagement with women's rights organizations, feminist UN agencies has increased as opposed to what it had been in the past. But also, just to bring it home, in our network, for example, as we were doing mobilization for the symposium itself, we also then had to form various working groups within our chapter that are working on different issues. So we have a communications working group, we have an advocacy working group, but specifically a governance working group. That also has helped in shaping the symposium. But what the results of shaping those of having those subcommittees is that there's now they strengthened governance such structures at a country level, because here at the regional level we have a governance subcommittee, but that is translated at a country level into more strengthened governance structure, more buy-in at a country level to not only governance issues but also to the whole symposium activities and all. So I would say that also is maybe an outcome of the symposium. But and because of the subcommittees that I've also mentioned, you see, I've mentioned the communication subcommittee. Now there's free flow of information, more collaboration, more buy-in and engagement of our members as a result of the symposium. I think, I can mention that, and Hassan will add some more on top of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Josephine.
I'll jump in if my voice can be heard. Oh, good. Just let me know if I drop out again. There's been trouble at my end. So it's a delight again to be part of this conversation. The North American MenEngage Network, has been operating for some years, but this particular process of the Ubuntu Symposium, and then brought to the idea that we would do our own, and it just bumped up our activity by a large factor of 10. That's really the benefit of focusing time, date, and place. This virtual nature, I want to echo and repeat what other people said, that it just has widened efforts, and it's more inclusive in a kind of way. I acknowledge the lack of internet connections for all. That's a real issue, but it also meant that we didn't have to travel to connect together. And many more people are joining the conversation. I'm hoping that we continue after COVID having a virtual life like this in some fashion to continue it. I think the funding matters, and it's a practical piece. I want to acknowledge and appreciate the funding stream that has been made available for Ubuntu. I mean, that's not a small thing. It's a real thing. And to be able to support part-time staff, pay consultants, participate, we can provide stipends to speakers. These are all meaningful things. And I think and shouldn't be, lost in the shuffle here. It's a real, and we want to increase funding over time so we can continue it in a comfortable way and that we're not struggling on a week-to-week basis. I think that would be wonderful to experience that in this work. The programming we do really matters in that doing our in-country symposium, we did a 2-day, as some of you know, and it went beautifully, but it was very involved. It was masterfully produced in a technical sense, and we learned a lot to do that. You know, we had the funding to bring in 2 professional event planners, one who was experienced in hosting professionally, that this is what her work was, and the other person was a technical director and knew about these things. So just doing those things and having the capacity to have a technical director and a professional host just organized us in a way that we'd not been organized before, you know, and gave us a platform that we weren't otherwise familiar with. So that's a practical lesson learned. It's really worth doing those things. You know, and then the second piece we did practically is we moved some of that funding into partnerships. And so we've arranged formal partnerships with 3 new organizations that are part of our network now that weren't before. And these organizations are substantial. One is in the Native American communities. The other is in the Canadian youth community and doing active work in schools with boys. And the other is a US-based theater group in youth. That's very new work for us. We were not very much into the youth work per se as a network. And so the symposium process has allowed us to move into youth connections as a network. And so I just want to say that this has mattered a lot, and it's a valuable relationships that are going to move forward. You all will benefit from those programs soon. You'll see them on the calendar. And these programs that these partners are going to bring forward due to the symposium funding and the effort that brings along. Now, my last comment is going to be about challenges. As this is all great work, as you've mentioned, it's exhausting. Who's not been exhausted by the concentration of this work? And we also want to turn it all off in January. Okay, we're done. Vacation, with a vacation in the calendar, you know. But we're all kind of coming back alive a little bit at this stage, which I'm happy to see. But but the challenging of the capacity is very real. You know, it's just coincidentally our network. We have a board of directors, and we've incorporated as a formal NGO, and that board of directors doubled in size over the same time frame. And that itself is very powerful and exciting, but also chaotic. And so managing the chaotic nature of this is a challenge. And so I think I look forward to having on a stronger footing in over a year's time. So those are my comments. They're wonderful challenges and wonderful benefits. So thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. I love that, managing the chaotic nature. That's wonderful. Sorry, I cut someone off there.
Yeah. I jump in.
Yeah, go for it, Carlos.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Craig. And I think I just wanted to add a bit on the partnership piece, because obviously we have, at NAMEN, we have a strategic plan and a mobilization plan, just like any organization out there. But that, partnership piece was really, strategic in terms of how do we, how that can help us to implement, our strategic, plan, and especially things that we didn't we didn't know, even though we were quite aware of in terms of like how do we work with, youth, for instance, knowing that youth, it's like the tranche of the population that is growing, significantly growing in many directions, in North America. And also the agenda around like indigenous, people who are literally continue to struggle, to be visible on their own land, and then in the middle of that, like the women agenda. So it was all the things that we did, to plug in with our strategic plan was quite like a strategic, in the process to say, and obviously like increasing the membership as well to support and help the membership to understand like what it is really when we're talking about like sharing.
You're breaking up a bit, Carlos. I wonder if you want to put your video off.
For the field that one of Ross hang off.
You are, maybe, yeah, there you go. That could be better.
Is that better? Oh,
yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So yeah, so I just wanted to emphasize that piece, and that I believe that even extending this kind of partnership outside of North America, the way we're trying to do here by sharing the experience that we had, it's also the way to build this kind of partnership and see how we can work, increase and strengthen the cross-regional experience and use that as a best practice, exchange to also increase our own strategic plan implementation. So that's what I wanted to add on what Craig said.
Thank you. And I'm just noting the time. So I want to say to all the speakers, so we had sort of broken this up into two different groups, but it's also totally okay if you have something to add, Alvaro, Kevin, Mangesh, to please feel free to just jump in. And just get involved in the conversation since we don't have that much time left. And Ellis, I see that you have unmuted yourself. Did you want to, go for it.
Say something. I actually, it's kind of hard to me to answer to this actual question, but like connected to what other people are talking about, I would also say first that it is a challenge to like get everyone to go to the Ubuntu sessions, to make the time to participate, and it would be so good if the members actually did that. So we're trying to get people to it, because even to be part of this collective learning, I feel like for myself that I haven't attended enough of them, and I can tend to watch some of them afterwards. So that was one thing. And then I would say that for Europe's sake, and I work part-time in MenEngage Europe Secretariat and part-time in the Swedish organization MEN. And I would say, for example, for us as a member organization, MEN, it has meant a lot of interesting connections to other organizations worldwide, especially concerning climate and masculinity and that discussion. So that would go for all Europe's members, I guess, to as you have highlighted before, like to connect to others in other regions and to exchange thoughts. That was it from me.
I just want to say that it's been a challenge to get youth participation into the processes. So youth participation, it's been tough, and we've been working, of course, through the bottom up to see that all the processes for Ubuntu actually meaningfully involve the young people. So that is something that we continue to look out for. But also another challenge for us is that we are proud that we did very well to mobilize members on the continent to attend a kickoff event, but notice that we're actually not doing well sustaining that momentum for the kickoff event. There were so many people geared up for the kickoff event in Rwanda. But if you follow the virtual Ubuntu Symposium, we got some drops in that. So it's a challenge to keep people with the same momentum, alive and active and following all the processes. So those have been some of the things we look at and say, how can we do this better? But of course, we acknowledge that the capacity that this symposium has brought in terms of teaching people how to organize these things. And here I'm looking at Rwanda. As Africa, we organize our MenEngage Africa Symposium, and we are proud that Ubuntu has added a lot of capacity, and we now have a wide spectrum of people to work with as we mobilize the MenEngage Africa Symposiums. That's it for me.
I can jump in.
Go for it, Tricia.
Great. I just wanted to say that, and I'm going to just be very brief, and Kevin, you can just share as well. But I think for me in particular, coming out from the symposium definitely provides this, well, not coming out, but it really helped us to amplify what advocacy means for us here in the Caribbean. And I think one of our major next steps as a result of the symposium, and because the symposium provided a space for us to be able to start the conversations around advocacy on a whole different level, making keeping intersectionality at the forefront, making sure it's feminist informed. We have, and when I say we, CariMAN is now embarking on creating its official and formalizing its own regional advocacy network for the region as well. So that is one of our major next steps. And also, how are we thinking about youth mobilizing and mobilizing youth in a very strategic way, whether it's branded as change makers across a cross-sectional lens as well. So that is, we have some huge ideas, some grand ideas. But, the symposium really allowed us for us to think critically what that space really means, and also how our work plan and agenda for this new year kind of would continue the work of what the symposium started for us in the region. And just to say, it inspires us that, and I'm going to say this, I see our chair is on the call and Kevin is on the call. It definitely inspires us that, maybe the next MenEngage Symposium we can definitely in the Caribbean be your host as well. Yeah, we feel very inspired. Thank you.
And I fully endorse that and look forward to the extra workload, Tricia. Thank you. Mangesh asked the question earlier, how do we build on the legacy of the symposium? And I'm connected to our day-to-day work. And I agree with Carlos when he said that Ubuntu is such a powerful term. So I want to just put it out that maybe one of the things we can consider is declaring this the Ubuntu decade, and maintaining those cross-cutting teams. Well, it's something that CariMAN intends to do, maintaining those cross-cutting teams in all of our work, and finding, how we can intertwine it. So I don't think that even though we have moved from 3 days to 8 months, I don't think we have exhausted the opportunities. And I'm feeling, and I hear the excitement in Tricia's voice, I'm feeling like we've just begun this journey, this Ubuntu journey, so I'm really excited for next steps.
Wonderful. Mangesh, I see you.
Yeah, I think I've said that earlier in other forums, but I still think it's worth reiterating, which is that in terms of geographical scope, I think we really need to do something to bring within our purview in a meaningful sense. Regions such as East Asia, Southeast Asia, West Asia, somehow I still get the feeling that they are not quite part of all these discussions, conversations, the mobilization that began way back almost, more than a decade ago. This entire MenEngage process somehow seems so far not to have been able to draw them into its fold. So that's a challenge. One other thing And here, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we say, engaging men, we also mean engaging men and boys. Now, how to define that category, boys, there could be problems, but I get a sense that there is a very crucial group and there is a very crucial age at which gender identities are formed. They get crystallized. And a very sensitive age at which one can try and influence this process and intervene in some way. And that would be the early teens or even a little before that. These are essentially people, boys, who are still in school. I mean, and I doubt it if we are able to reach out to them in any meaningful way. I'm not sure. Here, for example, our campaigns, I don't think have really extended to this group. We have been able to talk to college students, etc. University college, yes, definitely, but not these younger people. So I'm just wondering whether there's something we can do to reach out. So that's basically what I want to say.
Great, thank you, Mangesh. Alvaro, do you want to add anything before we get to I think you're the last one.
Ok. Bien, muy de acuerdo con lo que se ha estado conversando. Creo que un reto que tenemos de aquí en adelante es cómo dar seguimiento no solo a los temas del simposio, sino a los compromisos adquiridos por cada una de las redes de cada país y las redes regionales. Me parece que hay un antes y un después del simposio, porque el simposio puso en evidencia las implicaciones del tema de masculinidades. Y yo creo que ya no podemos decir, vamos a continuar con los temas de antes. Yo creo que hay que darle continuidad. Se acaba el simposio, pero inicia un proceso en donde cada red tiene que darle seguimiento. ¿Cómo dárselo? Desde la incidencia política, desde el trabajo comunitario, desde el trabajo de las redes. Ese es el gran reto que creativamente tenemos que construir cada región. En relación con lo que decía el compañero anterior, que el nombre no lo ubico, pero bueno, me parece que al hablar de los hombres niños o hombres jóvenes, yo creo que es hombres de todas las edades. MenEngage trabaja con hombres de todas las edades. Prioriza, me parece que prioriza en hombres, en niños, adolescentes y hombres jóvenes, porque son las nuevas generaciones. Pero no podemos dejar por fuera a hombres de más edad, ni siquiera a los adultos mayores. O sea, es hombres de todas las edades. Y las masculinidades también, que es diferente a los hombres, ¿verdad? Porque las masculinidades tienen que ver también con imaginarios colectivos, con formas de subjetivación, etcétera. Entonces me parece que es importante que rescatemos esto de los hombres de todas las edades. Y nada más un pequeño comentario para el compañero que habló anteriormente. Claro que es fundamental trabajar con niños, con adolescentes. Nosotros en Costa Rica trabajamos mucho con adolescentes porque tenemos una política pública de masculinidad que hace que desde el colegio los jóvenes reciban temas de masculinidad, los varones, y reflexionen. Sin embargo, eso es fundamental, pero no es suficiente, porque hemos encontrado que ellos reciben muy bien las ideas, pero cuando se enamoran, cuando establecen lazos de pareja, empiezan a establecer relaciones de control y poder con las jóvenes con las cuales se involucran. Entonces, aunque tengan la información de que no deben ejercer eso, el amor y el erotismo a veces es más fuerte y todas las concepciones de amor romántico patriarcal resultan también ser muy fuertes. Por eso es que es importante trabajar luego estos temas con los jóvenes, una vez que ya empiezan a establecer relaciones de pareja. Básicamente.
Wonderful, thank you. there anyone that wants to add just to this question? We've got, I do want to take us into the last question, but I just want to make sure that everyone has had a chance to share around this. Yeah. So I think, I mean, I used to be a high school teacher, and I'd have a big whiteboard behind me, and it was just a mess of notes through every talk that I gave, because the way that I think is like just writing. So I have way too many pages of notes from this discussion to bring it all together. But I think I'm going to just for now focus a little bit on this question around how does this inform the work going forward, and take some of the key things that you've shared so far. And I think a lot of it is around the how. How do we keep the momentum going? How do we use the capacity that we've built to keep the follow-up moving forward? How do we engage broader groups, broader audiences? And in different regions, that seems to be different groups that you're looking at. Youth in some regions, women in other regions, LGBTQI in other regions, et cetera, et cetera. So really thinking about how sort of the openness that seems to have been created through this process, and the increased interest and the increased partnerships and the increased connection and communication, how do we keep that going so that it has meaningful impact in the various audiences that we want to be working with? I think another thing that I feel like has come out is this idea of the power of collaboration and networking. And so moving forward, how do we keep that going as well is a really important aspect. In ways, and I'll bring this to, I think I'll share this again at the end, but just also being mindful of capacity. You know, Craig mentioned funding and how important that is. And so there's the resources in terms of financial resources, but there's also the human capacity and how we maintain the longevity and the sustainability of these things in a way that is practical for everyone involved, appreciating all the time and effort and energy that goes into all of these different processes. And then I think another thing that came out was just this idea of within the different regions being able to start conversations at new levels. And I think that's really powerful. Samita, you mentioned that around advocacy, for example, and really thinking about how we use that momentum and how we continue those conversations, as I've said. So really thinking about that. And then I think the other thing that came out really strongly is this idea of the critical reflection. So I can't remember who it was that said this, you know, we've got so many grand plans. I think it may have been Tricia. One of the speakers said it, and we have a lot of grand plans, and I, you know, and we have so many things that we could do and so many ideas. And I think it's part of the work, the creativity and the passion that we all bring to this work. And then through this process, having the opportunity to critically reflect on what is it that we do? What can we actually do? How do we meaningfully do which projects? And so what do we take on and what do we decide not to take on? And I think that's a really important question. You know, we can't take on everything. So how do we critically reflect on our roles and on what it is we want to take forward from the symposium? And I'm going to leave it there for now. What I want to do, you're all on the screen. Well, the ones that have their video on are on the screen. So officially we have 8 minutes left. So there was initially you had 1 minute each, and now I'm going to ask you to keep it between 30 seconds and a minute at the absolute most. And just for each of you, we can go around and just have each of you share sort of a key takeaway from this talk. So I think not so much from the work that you've done in your region, but really what you've learned or question you want to ask another region, etc. What is that key sort of takeaway from this discussion that we've had now? I'm going to open it up to the floor. I can either just call on people, or you can happily unmute yourself, and we'll just go around and make sure we get everyone in.
For me, my key takeaway from this discussion is how can we take forward the Ubuntu spirit even beyond the Ubuntu Symposium? Thank you.
Thanks, Hassan.
For me, I think my main takeaway is the importance of teamwork, even as this core group, as we're presenting as well, but even beyond that, even in our own spaces, regional spaces as well. Yeah.
I think for me, a key takeaway is how do we maintain the momentum that we've created in the work that we are doing? How do we maintain that, and how do we continue collaborating? Yeah, thank you.
To me, I loved seeing you and being. I feel new to this context, and it was really good to meet you all. So that is like my main takeaway, that I got to know more of MenEngage Alliance and get to know more of how the regions work. Even though I feel like I'm excited to know more. So I look forward for more cross-regional collaboration when we feel that it will help us. So I take away new faces, and I hope you will remember my face too. Okay, thank you.
I will echo. This is Craig. I will echo that sentiment. You know, that I would just say the connection and relationships are, you know, maintaining this. It's a key source of the energy and central to the work. So good to get to know you.
Yeah, for me, how do we maintain and build and spotlight that shared ownership in the region and globally?
Talking about critical reflection, that was Carlos, sorry. So talking about critical reflection, I've been reflecting a lot these days about masculinity and feminism, like how men standing as feminists are perceived by women, and also in the broad way when we talk, because the reason why I've been reflecting on that is because I've been having that conversation here in Ivory Coast with some folks as well. And there is this kind of misunderstanding around anytime we talk about feminism, it has to be women. And now, as different movements are growing, we see the emergence of many men standing or as a feminist or pro-feminist, whatever we can call it. But those men are being pushed back also, both by women themselves, but also other men who are laughing at them. So I've been reflecting a lot on that. So if we can get it could be another kind of agenda for the Global Secretariat to look for expertise around, so we can build that allyship both in terms of action, but also in the psychological and mental point of view to accompany men in that process. I think that would be great. So that was my critical reflection.
Well, I think for me, this moment of regional connectedness, which we have at this cross-regional roundtable, I think that shouldn't limit to these few people over here, the regional coordinators or the key people. But like what I want to bring the whole region into this cross learning kind of atmosphere, because I really feel that we don't need to any of the regions do not need to feel kind of isolated in this whole process. We need to bring in that connectedness and that the energy that we have created with that connectedness, that definitely, as Kevin rightly mentioned, we need to take it to the whole decade. I'm totally with that, with you, Kevin. It should be a decade named on Ubuntu. So thank you.
Mangesh?
Yeah, I agree with Samita that we need to find innovative ways of sustaining this sort of cross regional dialogue. Perhaps like cities have sister cities, maybe we can have sister organizations, in each region, perhaps, and then there would be a kind of a direct dialogue at a different level, and it would be more intimate and more lively and meaningful somehow, I feel, because often these mediated kinds of dialogues on only certain formal occasions, they have their format and they have limitations. So it's just an idea that occurred to me. Thank you.
Alvaro?
Sí, yo coincido en términos generales, sobre todo que tenemos que, es un nuevo enfoque, ¿verdad? No es solo un tema. En el diálogo con las mujeres, tenemos que aprender mucho de lo que nos diga el movimiento de mujeres y de lo que nos diga el feminismo. Por ejemplo, en América Latina hay compañeras que dicen, o que no están muy, o sea, que guardan cierta resistencia de que los hombres estemos trabajando al lado de la agenda feminista. Porque algunas dicen, ¿para qué se meten a trabajar con la agenda feminista? Tenemos temor de que quieran algo así como usurpar cierto protagonismo o venir a sacar provecho de lo que han sido años de lucha de nosotras, ¿verdad? Entonces yo creo que debemos de trabajar mucho en diálogo respetuoso. ¿Cómo quieren las compañeras que los hombres nos unamos a esto? Somos hombres feministas, somos hombres pro-feministas, somos hombres que apoyamos las luchas de las mujeres. Entrar en ese diálogo para que nos sintamos cómodas todas las partes. Igual diría yo con todos los otros movimientos de la dinámica social, cambio climático, movimiento LGBT, etc. O sea, creo que algo que podemos de seguir nosotros trabajando es cómo darle continuidad al diálogo con las otras organizaciones, pero de manera respetuosa. No llegar MenEngage como que aquí llegó el que lo sabe todo, o aquí llegó el que lo tiene todo muy claro. No, llegar humildemente a proponer un diálogo y a ofrecer nuestro trabajo. A ofrecer nuestro corazón, como lo dice una canción, ¿verdad? Yo vengo a ofrecer mi corazón acá, de manera humilde, o sea, porque si estamos hablando que los principios de Ubuntu es poder con y desde abajo, yo creo que eso también tiene que manifestarse en la manera como vamos a trabajar, desde la humildad, para que los sectores con los que trabajemos no se sientan que aquí llegaron los hombres a imponer, porque en eso tenemos que tener mucho cuidado, ¿verdad? Si bien es cierto, MenEngage no es solo hombres, por suerte, son mujeres, personas de género no binario y hombres, eso es cierto, pero el nombre es men. Entonces, esto podría decir, bueno, llegan los hombres, hay que tener acá mucho cuidado, pero no solo con las mujeres, con todos los sectores. O sea, yo creo que el lema de Ubuntu, ese lema, solo soy yo si eres tú, debemos de llevarlo más allá del simposio. Esto es más allá del simposio de Ruanda. Esto tiene que ser un lema que sea como un paradigma de trabajo para todas las redes de aquí en adelante. Tal vez ya lo teníamos, pero ahora es hacernos más conscientes que debemos trabajar bajo ese lema.
Okay, so we are just a little bit over time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to firstly just say really a big thank you to all of you for participating today. I certainly feel really energized and inspired by all the things that you have shared, the challenges and the obstacles, as well as sort of the wins, or whatever we want to call them. It's a lot. And I think just to acknowledge that, we've spoken it, we've touched on it. The word overwhelm has been used, and, increase the lack of capacity, but those are really big challenges. And so I think just to acknowledge that is really important, that we have all been stretched through this process, and for different reasons and in different ways. I think, just having to go virtual was a stretch, and then going longer term was a stretch. But I think, and so acknowledging that. And so I think the key question that seems to me to be coming out of this conversation is how we keep this momentum going, not only sort of internally within the different regions, but also then externally with the new partners and the new visibility and the increased networks that we have, that are sort of emerging as a result of the symposium. And I think that the important thing that I take away from that, though, is this idea of how do we balance this, this enthusiasm, the passion, the desire to do more, with also this need to create, I think somebody called it organizations of care, or cultures of care within our organizations. And so really finding that way of using the opportunities that are available to us in ways that are also allowing for these organizations and these cultures of care to emerge both internally and externally. And then just to end off, I think there's two sort of almost paraphrasing from the speakers, just to say the idea of this Ubuntu decade. And I think I think that if we had suggested that a year ago, that would have seemed impossible. But somehow there is such a beauty to this, to what's unfolding here right now. And I really, I can't think of the word right now, but I think it's beautiful, and I think it's a wonderful idea. And I'm going to end with Alvaro, your sentiments. I am here and I offer my heart to you. And I think that is really what we're all trying to do here. And it isn't always easy. It doesn't always look pretty. Craig, you mentioned the chaos. It is real. It's a journey. It's a process that we're going through, and we have to accept the moving forward and the going back and all of the things in between. But we are here to really offer each other our hearts and to come together to do meaningful work. And so really appreciative and grateful and acknowledge all of you for the work that you have been doing. And thank you once again.